Welcome to this week's episode of the GuestX podcast. I am your co-host, the better looking one, slightly less intelligent co-host, sitting here next to my co-host, Brian Hamount. Brian, we are back at it after a couple weeks. I tell you what, I didn't know what to do with myself when I wasn't taping 5 podcasts a week with you.
It was really strange, right? I mean, I think I came into it this morning saying I'm not entirely sure how I'm supposed to be setting myself up and how to do these introductions anymore.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, what's the subject that we're talking about? I tell you what. What's that?
Today we've got a really good guest, so
we do. And I'm excited about this because I will tell you, as you know, I just got back from a trip to. Was in London for 3 weeks and actually thought a lot about our guest because, we'll get into it. This is a drum he's been beating for a while. So I'm really excited. So let's jump in today. And cause I have a feeling this is going to have a lot of content here. We're going to have a lot of questions. So why don't you lead us in?
Yeah, sure. So on today's podcast, we are talking to Chris Maughan. Chris is, he's been in the industry for over 20 years. He has a really big background in holiday and commercial rentals. Chris is the founder and CEO of I-PRAC, the leading membership approval certification for the rental property market. Chris is also the CEO and co-founder of AES Accommodations Ltd. And AES Events Group, a corporate and events provider. Chris, welcome to the show.
Pleasure. Great to be here, guys. Finally.
Yeah, so we had the pleasure to speaking to you a little bit before the show, and I think there's a lot of topics here that we're going to go through, especially when we start to talk about certification, professionalism. But I love our listeners to, especially here in the US, if they don't know you, they should know you. Give us a little bit of your background, what you've done in the past, and then how you've transitioned into vacation rentals, and then from there, how you've transitioned into developing I-PRAC.
Sure. Okay. So I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. So I started off in the hotel industry, which was Swallow Hotels when I was 16, which is now Marriott. Then I moved over to health clubs, private health clubs, when I was about 19 to about 23. So I was a regional director for the health club. So I've always been in hospitality. And then I moved down to the south of France in Cannes, where I started a small, very small at the time, short-term rental business, which was something that I'd never done before. But we started with a small studio, which is our first ever property. And over the last 20 years, we've built that business to manage just short of 250 properties. And we now serve, some of the global brands like Twitter, Google, Spotify, Disney, and we're their nominated supplier for accommodation in Cannes. So we're a leader in corporate accommodation, and that's where we've built the company to be. We transmitted it also into like event management as well. So we did a lot of event management with big villas and big event venues, transforming them into big event spaces for big clients like MTV and Disney. And then it was more the fact of, I was quite into the industry, of course, but it was in 2014 when I witnessed firsthand, was a family of 5, husband, wife, 3 kids. They booked a villa in the south of France and paid £15,000 to arrive and realize that it didn't even exist.
Oh my God.
And they were stranded on the side of the road with their 6 or 7 suitcases, 3 kids not knowing where the hell they're going to sleep, husband and wife arguing. But anyway, they found us actually by a Google search looking for like alternative accommodation. And we helped them out. And the next couple of days, I had them in my office, and I just got to the bottom of what had happened. And they showed me the website they booked on. So I started investigating this and realized that our industry, the short-term rental industry, was in dire straits because not everybody had the intention to be professional and deliver the service that they were charging for. So it wasn't a one-off incident, it was happening all over the world. So when I look to think, what can this industry, we must have some kind of standards or a certification that can be introduced to basically make this a safer place for consumers. And there wasn't anything, you know, so rather than like talk about the problem, I thought, well, now's the time. I think, you know, I'm going to step up and try and solve this. So that was what we did in 2014. We went through 2 years of R&D, 8 months lost and 100,000 lost in a website that we built wrong. But we went back to the drawing board and we rebuilt it to what it is today. But 2 years, and we launched in 2016, and now we're in 28 countries and, you know, just short of 45,000 members. And
Wow.
it's basically, yeah, and it's basically a certification of trust, because I believe that the consumers need trust in that they're booking with a professional operator. And the only way to do that is to be third party approved. So we built this platform that we go out there and we have a robust system where we approve our members, and then they can showcase their I-PRAC logo and showcase credibility, trust, professionalism through an authentic logo. And that's what we did. So I became the CEO of that company in 2016, and we still run AES. So that's where I am today. And I like Matt said previously in the intro, that I have been banging the drum because I just feel that our industry has so many fantastic operators who are really out there committed to delivering this fantastic service. But because of the lack of barrier to entry, you know, the lack of barrier to entry into this industry, we've just got so many rogue and unprofessional operators that are giving the industry a bad name and the consumers a bad experience. So I-PRAC's kind of that bridge of confidence and trust to kind of separate all of the professional and trusted, credible operators and leave the other ones behind. And I believe in the next 5 years, if you're not operating at a level of professionalism and trust and credibility and showcasing that, then you're not going to be in the industry.
It's
You think that's going to be done through certification programs?
A little bit, but I mean, in my eyes, I'll go back to when we were designing I-PRAC, and, there's a lot of trust logos out there, but you can't just have a trust logo, because I go back to when we were designing I-PRAC. I-PRAC was designed in a very special way, because when we looked at, do you know ABTA in the UK, the international, the protection of travel? Well, what we found is in our research was fake websites, 93% of fake websites were using the ABTA logo, right? Now, from a consumer point of view, you look at a website, you see a trust logo, you don't go any further down the line, because you just don't know how to. You don't know what you should be looking for. You don't know, they just see a trust logo, they're ABTA approved, they must be trustworthy, let's book with them. So all of these fake websites and fraudulent operators were using, ABTA logos and other trust logos. So we had to design a technology behind how I-PRAC worked. And that's why every I-PRAC logo is unique, because the member's ID number is embedded in the logo. So there's no I-PRAC logo the same. So any consumer can go onto the I-PRAC website, search that with that ID number, and then bring up that member's profile. And that was the authenticity, it was like authentic behind what we were trying to do. So there was accountability behind the member. It's not just a logo. So you can't just pick up an I-PRAC logo, put it on your website, because the consumer can check who you are.
That's really interesting.
And that's what we had to do. We couldn't just build a logo, because otherwise we would have been doing everything. We would have just been another trust logo fraudsters could copy, and we needed to avoid that. So we had to invest heavily in technology that could build this technology that would basically, create a new logo, ID number for every new member that was approved. So that's kind of like where we are, but there's nobody else doing that. So the answer to your question in terms of certifications and accreditations, they're only good if there's a way of being accountable. Otherwise, they don't hold any value.
Yeah.
And this is why a lot of the time we have to be very careful about, same with health and safety. You know, I mean, during COVID, we saw all of these people bringing up like good to go logos, you know, with a COVID tick and all of these different things. And they're not trust logos because there's no accountability. Anybody can just paste and copy that logo and put it onto a website. And what was happening was they weren't used as trust logos, they were used as conversion logos. You know, to give consumers the opportunity to say, oh, they must be okay, that, you know, and that's what we were really, you know, against in that COVID world of like, let's just not start bringing out all these trust logos that hold no accountability. So I-PRAC holds the accountability.
Right? And they still don't. I mean, and you know, it's a really good point. When we started a property, we love to start businesses when things are tough. My first property management company, we started back in 2008 with, you know, all of the financial issues here in the US. Start all over again, our short-term rental property management company about 6 months ago. And part of the reason behind that was we were watching the industry and local operators and finding that a lot of people were doing exactly what you were saying. They were putting up, instead of trust logos, it was more conversion logos. They were trying to figure out ways to get heads in beds. And if you said things like, you know, we clean our house with antibacterial, whatever the language was at that time, people trusted that language. And unfortunately, the OTAs were taking it, displaying it without any certification behind, and any sort of, there was no background behind it. So what we actually did was we decided to start from scratch, and we took all the courses. So I worked with Dirk Johnson, and I said, you know, we're going to start this management company. I want to get certified. I'll go through the process of how do we clean a house? How do we do the linens? How do we, and I think that that's the exact process that most managers should be taking, but there's no governing body that's telling us, in order to be able to do this, and in order to become a professional, these are the steps that you need to take. And it sounds like you've taken a really good step, which is identifying that there's a piece of technology that we can use in order for guests to be able to verify that, yes, these property managers are actually professionals and they've gone through certain processes and procedures. The question is, how do we get people to adopt this?
Well, this is the hardest part, because a lot of people, I mean, we talk to a lot of property managers who are all over it, and they're like, yes, we want it because we want to showcase credibility and professionalism wherever we can. A lot of other operators are like, we don't need it. Our business is working as it is. So I believe the answer to your question is, yes, you need to have a governing body who can introduce all of the correct certifications to the industry that people need to hold to be able to operate. But once again, at the minute, it's kind of like a self-policing, you know, it's, if you want to call it self-policing, and it's kind of like, we do this, and it's why you have to be able to have a logo of trust that has accountability and not just a logo. And I mean, also with the I-PRAC logo, it's like, what happens? What happens if something goes wrong under a certified property? There's the other question, because it's not just about being certified. It's like, what's the process of what happens if something happens? So when you think about with an I-PRAC, the way I-PRAC platform works is a consumer can, an I-PRAC member will direct a consumer to their I-PRAC ID, and they will check that person out and go, okay, look, they're third-party certified by an industry body of trust. Okay, but when they're on that profile of that member, they can register their booking. Okay, so they've already paid the member and everything, but they can, after that, they can go and register their booking. They put the dates, the amount they've paid, they submit it, and I-PRAC get a copy of that. The consumer gets a copy of that, and also the member. And we guarantee 100% of the payments made to that member.
Wow.
Yeah. So what we're providing is not only just the logo, we're providing a guarantee of payments to our members. So consumers can look at it and go, well, we've got a third party company who's guaranteeing the payments that we're going to make to that company directly, and they're the certification of trust. So all of a sudden we are a conversion tool, because you're not just putting a logo there. There's accountability behind the logo, and it's kind of like I look at today with health and safety certifications are just too cheap for our industry. There's no way you can run a health and safety certification on that charging that amount of money. And you can't say like £400 or €400 is enough money to charge a client, an operator, to consume that he's operating to health and safety standards, because it's very easy to get certified on like the 1st of April. But what does your rental look like on the 7th of July after 17 rentals? Are you still adhering to these standards? So you've got to pay something like $6,000 or euros or pounds to be health and safety certified. But inside that 6,000, there's mystery shopping checks throughout of the year, where your business is going to be checked without you even knowing about it. Now, are you ready for that? You know, and this is why we have to bring in standards. You know what I mean? So it's not about just getting a health and safety logo and saying, hey, I'm great. We offered the health and safety. What happens 9 months down the line? What happens 6 months down the line after all these rentals? Are you still operating? Who's checking that you're still operating? But what happens is 12 months later, they come back, they clean everything up, they get it done, and they get passed again. But what happens, and also these health and safety companies, they're not given any kind of guarantee to a consumer that if they do slip in a property and crack their head open and end up in hospital, yeah, but this property was certified by you guys. They've got your logo. Yeah, but we're only advisors. Well, how would that help the consumer? Yeah. So we have to stop and think about what these trust logos mean. And if we're going to bring them into the industry, they've got to be brought in the right way, at the right price, with the right systems in place, so that we can build the industry to what it should be, not just like, cutting corners. And that's what we're doing right now. People are just cutting corners, and that's why we're not growing. People say we're growing, but we're growing in the wrong way.
And I think you're absolutely right. I guess it's the effects that I look at from that. You said a couple minutes ago, if you're not doing these certification processes within the next 5 years, you're going to be out of business. The next question behind that is, if that's true, how many homes that are currently being served in the market are going to exist as part of the market? Because I can tell you that an enormous amount of inventory would disappear if we actually had to put some of these processes in place. So there's a huge effect there, but the people that want to be in the business will do the certification courses, will get their houses up to standard, and honestly won't be afraid of having secret shoppers come in to shop these units. Matt, I mean, you're familiar with this kind of stuff, right? Secret shoppers are something that existed in the restaurant business. I don't know how many people know that you were on that side of the world, but secret shopping is something that's pretty normal in the restaurant side of the world, and for good cause, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't find a brand, at least a US brand, that is not paying internally their own secret shopping, right? Because they've got franchisees, they've got licensees, they've got corporate restaurants that they can't afford to get to, that they can't always have corporate people in, and they've got to have a way of going back and checking to make sure everything's being done. But I think, to your point, Brian, I do think there would be a retraction, but I cannot think of a single industry where in the long run, right, creating, and I think we say barriers to entry, it makes it sound like a bad thing, right? But creating a governing body, a certification process has not in the long run been the right thing for that industry. I'm also a former, I like to say recovering attorney, but no one's arguing in the US that you shouldn't have to pass a bar exam to represent people. Like that's not a thing, right? And I don't think that people over the long haul would be arguing, oh, I can't believe we still require these vacation rentals to be certified, right? Or to, to have certain protections, because it's about the consumer. But it's about our industry and the right people. And what I love about what you're doing, Chris, is when you look at your business, and I didn't know a lot about the 250 or so accommodations you guys rent, but Chris, I think it's important too. There's nothing in this really for Chris, right? The corporations that he's got, they know that that this villa and that villa, that it's all going to come, a certain way, because he's built a reputation. They're not out shopping on Airbnb, right? So it's not like if he can get this certification done. This is somebody who's trying to build an industry, who comes from hotels, who says, guys, let's get behind doing it the right way. And I think we've got to come together to get this done. So I'm excited about it. One of the things, Chris, I think is interesting. I'd love to get your take. You've talked a little about the consumer, but I do see this as a double-edged sword, right? In that, and it makes it hard because we've got to, one, get buy-in on the rental side, but two, there is a cost to educating then the consumer of, why do I care? What does it matter? Right? Like, what's that mean for me?
Yeah.
And that's expensive, because it's expensive anytime you have to educate people in, often 20-second sound bites.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's one of the biggest challenges we have at I-PRAC, which is the education side. And it's, excuse me. And it's something we're working on for, the first 5 years we were building the brand around the operators side, trying to get the operators around why it's important for you to stand out as credible and trustworthy and professional, because it'll increase your conversion rate and your retention rate. Okay. And that's probably why we've been able to convert so many professional operators into becoming members. But we rely on our operators to be the voice of I-PRAC as well, because at the same time, what we're saying is, don't become I-PRAC approved and certified and then hide your logo on page 6 at the bottom right of your website. Don't even talk about it. Your job is to also, because you've invested in becoming I-PRAC approved, talk about it, educate your consumers. Why? Because what will happen is the consumers will then look at it and go, I wasn't aware of that. That's great. Next time I go to London or maybe Paris, I'll look for an I-PRAC member. So all of a sudden that will all kind of rally around, and all of a sudden we're going to build consumers. What we need, and this is what the problem with, we might get onto that a bit later, but I feel like our industry is a lot of the people in it are solving problems that the consumers don't have. Okay. So
Interesting.
Yeah. So all of a sudden it's like, let's ask the consumer what they want. I understand there's keyless check-in and all these new technologies and all of these kind of things. But if you break it down to a consumer, they don't want much. They want clean, they want safety, and they want it to exist.
Yeah.
And
at the core, that's exactly what they're looking for. Matt, you came back from the UK.
Oh God.
Tell us about that experience, because it's exactly what he's saying. We mess with, we go to conferences and things and we look at technologies that are coming into the marketplace, but seriously, how many guest experience, and we're in guest experience, right? Yep. Hey Matt, how many guest experience platforms did we see that are coming out this year?
Oh, you can't, you can throw a rock out the window and hit 10 guest apps. You really can. Right. It is, but I don't know that they're,
does it actually solve the problem? It doesn't solve the problem.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I think Chris is right. It certainly doesn't solve the problem if you don't get over the bar to just operating should be, the cleanliness, the safety, the things like that. Because if you don't take care of that, I'll tell you. So you asked the question. We stayed in 2 properties in London. One was absolutely beautiful. I would have paid double. The other one, I wouldn't have paid 25% of what we paid. It was disgusting. It was, and I've got a 5 and a 2-year-old. We're in a foreign country. And, my wife's looking at me like, are we really going to stay here for 7 days? And by the way, Airbnb, certified clean with the whole COVID. I mean, Chris, I wrote it down with like double marks under, but you want to talk about a conversion logo. It means nothing.
Nothing.
So, it was, and I did, Brian, I sent you a text. I said, our industry is in trouble. Because had that been my first experience with vacation rental, I never would have gone back. It would have been like going out to eat for the first time at a brand and like, finding something in your food, right? In a restaurant, you'd been done. There's nothing you could have done to have brought me back. And so, I think the certification is the first thing we've got to do. And then I think within those who are certified, creating some sort of star rating that can mean something to consumers. Because again, Brian, you and I talk about this. Once you're certified and I know, okay, it's going to be clean and it's going to be, then is it matching my expectations, right? And that's a big piece of it. But at first, we've got to get this certification thing right. So,
absolutely, baby steps.
Yeah, baby steps. That's exactly right. So, Chris, let me ask you this. So, is this something? I mean, obviously, what you're doing is private, right? Is this something though that maybe eventually a very large governing body goes out and maybe tries to acquire something like your company, right? So that people feel like it's a self-governing, because I think a little bit of this is nothing gets, I mean, you guys took the ball and ran with it because no one was, right? But you talk to some people and they go, well, who's making money on these certifications, right? And I think maybe I'm trying to figure out what the hesitancy is to people joining and getting behind something like this, because the good ones are going to win.
Yes. Well, I think a lot of, there's a lot of operators out here in our industry. They're not even making any money. They're not even running successful businesses, for one. So, but they're still operating. I mean, they're not going to go online and LinkedIn and Facebook and all of these platforms and say, I'm struggling, I'm losing properties hand over fist, I'm not making any money. They're not going to say that. But the reality is, 60% of our operators are in that position because they don't know how to manage a business. They've started an industry they don't know. They think it's a quick money scheme. And they're looking at their overheads and expenditure. And they're also looking at trying to bring down their bottom line in terms of anything like cleaning. I mean, I can't believe cleaning is our biggest investment in my company in CAT, the biggest one. And it's one I will have. Yeah, and it's the one I will have no doubt in. I will not let that slip for love of money. Cleaning. We don't even call them cleaners. We call them service executives because I put my cleaners at the top of our business, right? They're not cleaners, right? They're service executives. And that's what we call them. And we have weekly meetings with them. They know that our business wouldn't survive without them, okay? But other operators, they're operating at a level where they're trying to reduce the amount of money that they're cleaning. But what happens is the standard of the cleaning is pitiful. It's just not industry standard. And then when you go and ask them to invest £600 in a certification, it's like, woof, oh, no, we don't have that kind of money.
Right. So, well, in restaurants, Chris, we used to call it circling the drain, right? The bad operators, as sales would struggle, what do? They cut labor and they cut marketing. Well, and then sales get worse and then they cut labor and marketing. You can't cut yourself to profitability. You've got to raise the value of the product you're delivering so you can charge more, so you can build margins. And it seems counterintuitive to some of those people, like you're saying, but they need to, being educated on the finance side.
There's a lot of issues. There's a lot of issues. A lot of issues. Yeah. There's a consumer issue there, paying cost of cleans. There's a owner, believe it or not, issue with. I mean, I'm seeing it now. Homeowners that are looking at jumping over and they say, well, what's the cost of the clean? my cleans are probably 10 to 15% higher than most other property managers, but I've got awesome cleaners. We've implemented amazing processes. We do linens exterior, we're doing the right things, and there's a cost to that, but that's also translated to the reviews. So go and look at my reviews for my company, and
retention.
my cleans are 5-star. Why? I've invested in it. You can go to other management companies, it'll be cheaper. Go look at their reviews. And that's going to affect the business at the end of the day. So I think that there's a lot, again, it goes back to the learning, but we've got multiple layers. We've got to educate the property manager, the homeowners, and the guests. If you want the right service, the guests have to pay for the service.
Listen, we've got to drag all of the professional operators who want to improve. Okay, that's the key word here. Improve. Because where we start, like I'll admit, 21 years ago when I started in the business, I knew nothing about safety, this and that, but I had an intent to learn how to get better and better and better and better and better. And all the time I'm trying to learn and build the business, get better at this, get better at that. How can we make that better? And that's how we built the business. You've got people who don't want to do that, and they're going to stay stagnant. But there's a certain amount of people who want to learn, who want to do better. They want to build companies. They want to build brands. They want their industry to be better. They're the people we need to speak to. And automatically, when you drag all of them over to one side and say, this is where all the professionals sit, the other people either look up there in awe and want to be there, or they just fall away.
Yep.
And that's just what you've got to create. And for me, it's all about understanding the consumer has to come first. Okay. And, don't get me wrong. I love technology. I think it's helped the industry a lot, but at the same time, we do have to go back and think, does this technology have an impact on the guest experience? I did a post about 3 weeks ago that said, how many times do you contact your guest from booking to checkout? Okay. And some people said that they contact their guest like 18 times. It's like, that's like on the verge of stalking. Like, why do you need to contact your guest 18 times? Like, what is it? What are you trying to sell? Like in that, like for me, if you book a really high star hotel, you're going to get contacted probably around four or 5 times max, but very detailed professional communication that builds trust. Okay. Not 18 times that builds desperado, and this is what people are doing, but they're plugging into PMSs, and these PMSs are like pinging out emails all the time. Do you want cleaning? Do you want cleaning? Do you want to upsell? Do you want this? Do you want that? And it's just like, God, I only want to go and stay in a property for 2 days with my wife.
Yeah.
I'm getting more emails off this company than I do off my boss. So we've got to get back to basics as well, and make sure that we're thinking about the guest, putting the guest first, and basically saying, if I need to become certified to improve my guest experience, then I need to find money to do that, because that is part of me building a better company. And that's the message I put out there. If you don't want to be certified, I understand. Okay, that's okay. That's your decision, but you have to understand why. Why are you not being certified? You need to really look into the certification and understand what the reasons, what benefits it can bring, what negatives it brings. Is there value in it? Is there not value in it? Then you can make a professional decision. But I believe most professionals look at certifications. Well, we wouldn't have the membership today, is what it is.
45,000. It's not a small number.
Short. No.
Yeah.
If there's, it's a small number compared to the size of the market, but it's a big number in terms of how many people want to showcase professionalism, credibility and trust. And this is what it's all about. So I think that we've got to, over the next 5 years, just leave the operators who don't care too much, and they'll, bring in certifications, bring in barriers to entry. They'll just not jump through the hoops. Professionals will jump through the hoops.
But, and I've said this before, and maybe as we kind of wrap up here, Brian, but we either do it, or a governing body that doesn't listen right? And we're experiencing this in the US. You either fix your own kind of internal issues, or the government is going to step in from some far reaching. By the way, we were in Spain and they're talking about the EU's like, hey, could we, thinking about, can we have, regulations that apply evenly to, every market in the EU? And of course, rightfully so, right? You got people in Malaga, Spain. They're like, God, no, we're totally different than Paris. But this happens because you don't take care of your own house. Because the government's not, I mean, they're doing this because they're getting calls from constituents of, I showed up and there was no house there, and it was filthy and they wouldn't return my money and things like that. Eventually, that's what's going to happen if we don't find a way to go, no. We know this industry. We are the professionals. We'll get this fixed. And if you need any more incentive, then there's that, because you won't like what it looks like when it's handed down in the US from Washington, D.C., who has no idea how this industry runs or how it should run.
Well, we're seeing that in local regulations right now in several counties throughout the United States, where they've taken it down to the local level. And it's just a lack of trust in our industry. So they're taking it into their hands. And then the results are that property managers don't like what's coming down the pipeline. They're essentially shutting down a lot of the markets. They're limiting, and there's good reason behind that. But Chris, I think it goes back to one thing, is just taking everything back down to basics. Let's identify what we have all in common, because there are very few things that we all have to do, and we have to do them well. Get that basic right, get certified in those aspects of it. And then we can prove that we're actually trustworthy and we're going to run the right type of a business, so that we can continue to grow the industry. Otherwise, it's going to go out of control. Well, it is out of control.
It is. It's already out of control. I mean, and I think that happens in a way where, like, don't get me wrong, I've got nothing in terms of against Airbnb, but at the same time, Airbnb, when Airbnb blew up in like the home sharing world, and then all of a sudden you've got, basically you can list a property and start renting it within 12, 13 hours, then that's a problem. That the problem starts there, because all of a sudden you've got people who have probably got no intention to cause anybody any harm or financial loss, but they're just not professional in what they do, and they just don't know what it takes to run a short-term rental business. And they don't know the health and safety factors. They don't know all of these, aspects of what needs to be done. And Airbnb, like, that doesn't matter. Just get on there.
Yeah, especially right now, right? Because I mean, you hear them in Verbo, or fighting over who could, we've got no inventory. I mean, they'll book out. I mean, they'll book whatever they can get their hands on. And I had written that down earlier, and it's probably a whole podcast in and of itself. But technology has even further reduced what barriers to entry we did have. Right? You had an office, you had brick and mortar, people checked in. Larger staffs, because you couldn't, it was a lot of manual stuff. The technology, for the good things it's doing for our industry, has I would say further eliminated any barriers. And you're right, that anytime it's that easy, you're going to have bad actors, and we're seeing it.
That's it. I mean, and all I'm trying to create is awareness into the fact that a lot of people are talking about the short-term rental industries, the first recovery, travel vertical, and all these aspects of, like, the short-term rental industry is growing, and I'm just like, kind of think, I don't believe we're growing in the right way, and I'm a big believer on building something on sturdy ground, and I just think that this could all come crashing down in the next few years because things are going to start happening. Deaths are going to start happening in properties, and all of a sudden, it's happening already. But it's going to happen. It's going to happen on a bigger scale. The more easier it is to list and start renting out properties to people, then the more these accidents are going to happen. Because you can't put growth over safety. I mean, like, people turn around to me and said, 250 properties, I got there. Took you 21 years. I got there in 4 years. And I'm like, good for you. you know, but but what I'm saying is, will you still be here in 21 years?
Right. No, it's a good question. Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
I felt,
you know,
I felt like with that message right there, Brian, I was like, and Merry Christmas. Right. You know, more people, Merry Christmas, prosperous to that. But no, it is a great point. And I think it starts with getting people together. People like you, Chris, people, you know, in the US, there are people who are very passionate about this.
Absolutely.
And figuring out how to continue to build it. Hey, Chris, so as we wrap up,
we need buy-in not just from PMs and thought leaders like you, Chris, but we need buy-ins from the associations as well.
Yep.
Because everybody needs to work together rather than working on different missions. And I think that
absolutely
would have a lot of influence.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And look, the OTAs, whether we like it or not, they're going to need to play a part. And look, there are smart people and maybe they're just not winning the internal battle right now, but there are smart people at Airbnb and Vrbo who know the experiences like I had, right? And by the way, I've rented both of them because we don't yet have partners in London, rented both of them on Airbnb. So I should give them credit for the really great one we said, but who know that the experiences like I had are not doing their platform any good. And are in the long term, in the long run, are hurting their platform. And I think they can get behind this, but they're going to have to play a role, and they play a huge role in educating because they just have massive marketing dollars. So, well, Chris, for our listeners who want to, you know, get in contact with you all, find out more about what you guys are doing with the certificate. What's the easiest way for them to do that?
The best way is just to go straight onto the platform, which is www.i-prac.com, and all of the information's on there. I'm on I think I'm on the directors page, founders page, so my direct email's on there as well. So you can contact me directly. Always open to have conversations on certification, trust, you know, professional growth, anything like that with the industry. So hopefully this conversation can just open some eyes and ears onto where we need to be going in the future. You know, it's not, like I said before, it's baby steps, but if we're not doing it now, then I don't know what we're building.
Yeah, we're building a hell of an industry, hopefully.
Yeah, that's
absolutely.
Well, thank you, Chris and Brian. Yeah, I guess we should thank Explory, Abode PR, you know, our sponsor. And we've got, you know, the announcement went out, hospitality.fm. We joined a bunch of, I guess about now 7 or 8 all hospitality podcasts that are coming under Will Slicker's hospitality.fm. They're just really cool. Again, I think, you know,
it'd be really cool.
Yeah, educating people who are getting into this industry, you know, creating some different avenues, some different mediums to reach out to people. And I hope, look, I want to encourage, you know, I think these podcasts like this are encouraging people to get in this industry, and we should want to, because we attract great talent when we
absolutely
when people, and those people come, though, they're the ones Chris is talking about, right? They start listening to podcasts because they're like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. I'm going to educate myself. So, you know, thanks to both of our sponsors and to Will for everything he's doing with Hospitality FM. Chris, thanks again, and happy holidays to you and friends and family and everything. We appreciate the time.
Thank you so much, guys, and it's been an absolute pleasure. Well,
absolutely.
I look forward to round 2.
Okay, we trust me, that call will be coming. It only takes us about 6 months to find a spot on everyone's schedule, so we might as well start now.
We'll get there. But thanks a lot, guys. Really appreciate your time as well.